$5 million.
Is that right?
Make $500.
Well, they even called me the big.
Is that the one where they do the
I say things wrong.
Yeah. So
like
when you
the
look at
sizes.
Jazzy Jeff and the
So
Fresh
I give my clients books to read. I give them.
Handling your business. Welcome back to Handling Your Business. I'm your host, Curtis Jones Jr. And an interesting statistic: for the first time in the history of this country financially, plastic outdid paper as a form of currency used. I got this statistic from Kelly S. Torrance, who is in the financial business and is bringing to you and I a interesting new concept on how we use our money, not through check cashing, but through our own credit card designed for a marketplace that has traditionally been shut out of the banking industry. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thanks for having me.
Tell me what's going on in the cashless society and how that impacts the lower rung of the consumer, meaning those with bad credit and limited income. How's this working?
Well, what's happening is as we move further and further towards a paperless society, the poor and the people on limited income get further and further excluded by issues of access. What happens is if you don't have access to a plastic medium or some medium other than carrying cash around in your pocket, it makes it more and more difficult to do things.
Like renting a car or
Absolutely.
checking into a hotel becomes difficult with cash as opposed to plastic.
Absolutely. Gone are the days when you could call and make a reservation for a hotel and say, I want to pay cash for it once I get there. Now you want to pay cash for a hotel, they're generally charging you a $200, $300 deposit in order for you to pay cash. Most of the car rental companies have completely excluded cash as a form of payment. You can no longer rent a car without leaving a $500 deposit, subjecting yourself to a very rigorous credit check, and basically they take you through everything under the sun in order to pay for it with your own money.
Now, with the loss of a lot of full-service financial banks in the inner city, poor people, inner city people are relying more and more on check cashing, and they're getting ripped off in a way.
Well, check cashing performs a very necessary service because you're right, there are a lot of the large banking entities who have moved themselves out of the neighborhoods and moved themselves into more locations like in Philadelphia Center City, which creates a problem with people who live in the West Philadelphia, North Philadelphia areas from getting down here unless they have access to their own transportation, which, as you know, is very costly to some people, especially living in the city. So what's happened is the check cashing industry has taken a situation and used it and adapted it to their best benefit fee-wise. My company is designed around trying to attack that, bridging that issue of access for the general consumer.
So Cleared Pay is the name of your company.
Yes, sir.
And you're filling that niche. How do you do that?
What we've done is we've worked with a bank in the local area named Interstate Net Bank and designed with them a program that we call Cleared Pay. It's a virtual bank account for individuals who fall into the credit challenged, lower income strata, the people who are the check cashing customer. The program is very simple. What it is we don't do credit checks. We do basic identification check on an individual, and we don't even check your employer. People generally have the desire to do good and to want more out of what they're doing. So what we did was we adapted traditional banking products more towards a market that's traditionally underserved and undervalued.
Now, this came to be based on the bank's inability to deal with First Account Act, which was under the Clinton administration, which was an attempt for banks to be a little more user-friendly to low-income people. And that didn't work. Tell us what happened.
Correct. Well, Harvard University did a study basically finding out and identifying that there were approximately 38 to 60 million American citizens. And these are people generally over the age of 18 who have been excluded from the banking industry. Generally, what's happened is they're people who have either had difficulty with the accounting behind keeping a banking account open, or they've ran into a harsh situation, unemployment, being laid off, and a lot of other things, which caused them difficulty in maintaining their relationship with the bank. President Clinton enacted an act called the First Accounts Act that said he would incent banks to give people who fell in that category an opportunity to now have an account, become reassimilated into the mainstream of society. Unfortunately, what's happened is the bank looks at the person that falls into this unbanked category as a unmitigable risk, which is not necessarily true. And hence the reason that what we've done is we've taken, at Cleared Pay, we've taken the requirements of the First Accounts Act and the traditional banking practices and adapted it and made it work. Give people the opportunity and, let them astound you is one of the edicts of our company. We don't believe that the risk factor is unmitigable. It's a matter of providing people with the tools they need at the level of their personal situation and allowing them a way to continue in mainstream.
Now, you started on the internet and went from 0 to 200 million in assets, and now you have a physical presence. Tell us, how did that evolution occur?
Well, that's the bank that we use. It's actually done that. The bank, we found a bank that's actually very, very progressive. They believe in the inner city. They believe in the population that we're serving. They believe that there is a need for people to grow. And accordingly, what's happened is they've generated a lot of interest in their bank, and they've gotten a lot of products behind them because of the fact that they're not just designed for the mainstream corporate, or large high dollar value consumer. They have programs that fit everyone.
Now, Kelly, you mentioned a quote that I found astounding, that one of the most expensive things is to be poor. What did you mean by that?
Right. Well, that's something that we came up with inside the company, and it's as we examine the cost of living. The government comes up with these wonderful indexes that tell what it costs to live, but unfortunately, they're based on some, the typical middle American. What's happened is the poor and the economically challenged have very dissimilar problems from the people who they base these indexes on. What happens is you end up with people who have issues with, the cost of paying their bills, having to buy a money order in order to pay their rent because they don't have access to a checking account, having to shop at stores or find services that will deal with them solely in cash because they don't have access.
So some of the premiums of being poor are, like you mentioned, when you go rent a car, instead of having plastic, you have to put down a $500 deposit,
right,
which increases, they use your money, in
right,
other words. You mentioned on phone services that people that are of higher income strata don't pay as much for basic services as poor people do. What other examples are there?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of other examples. I have an e-commerce background, so people, just not being able to take advantages of the savings and discounts that exist on the internet. Right? Not being able to get internet service because you don't have a credit medium. People who have to, a person who has good credit goes out and buys a brand new car. They buy a brand new car. With that car comes a warranty. With that car comes, free service, free everything. But the average working class American who can't necessarily afford to go out and buy a new car ends up having to buy a car that they're constantly having to put money into to keep going just so that they can get to work to make the dollar that they need. And it's unfortunate. It's truly unfortunate.
Now, concept helps to address some of this. How does it do it?
Well, what we've done is by adapting a banking product and by putting the MasterCard branded debit card in front of it, what it allows is it breaks down those barriers of access. It allows a person to get the benefit of having their own bank account, the access that MasterCard provides. You know, MasterCard between MasterCard and Visa, they're the largest accepted credit cards in the world. So now if a person wants to go and buy a hotel room, go and rent a hotel room, they will take their card as a form of reservation. No longer will they have to put down the large deposits in order to, you know, rent a hotel room or rent a car or do the things that they need to do for basic living.
And in addition, you create a financial track record with the account, as I understand it, which doesn't happen when you cash a check at a check cashing.
Absolutely. You know, a perfect example is trying to buy a home right now. There's not a mortgage company around who will deal with an individual that doesn't have a bank account. Right? So what we say is, you know, that's one of the barriers to the poor succeeding. So we've built the program and designed it around a true banking account for the individual, which allows them to realize their dreams. You know,
how does your product differ from the Russell Simmons Rush Card?
well, it's very basic in there are basic principle differences behind the product, and there's also substantial fee differences. The basic principle difference is that we give an individual account to each individual person. A lot of the other companies who are operating in the space that we do have a single, what they call settlement account, which is an account geared towards the corporation who's issuing the card, and then each of the individuals has a virtual MasterCard number. So basically you have there's no equity into it for the individual. It's a card that's owned by whatever XYZ corporation that sells it. In this example, Rush Card. With ours, each individual has their own bank account. They get the benefits of having a bank account. For example, reporting the credit, doing, being able to purchase a home, being able to establish a relationship with a bank. They have those benefits because it's their relationship, not ours.
Well, you came from corporate America, Dow Jones. Tell the people how your heart led your head to this line of business, the example that you gave me.
Well, it's an interesting situation. I have a friend who's, you know, middle class. He works
Blue collar guy.
He's a blue collar guy. He works in a factory. He makes decent money, but unfortunately, he did not have credit cards, did not have a car, things like that. He was in a situation where he needed to go out of town for a funeral. Unfortunately, because of the fact that he was limited to using cash and going to, you know, either the counter to pay for a ticket or to one of the airline ticket agencies, he was stuck with the fares that they were quoting him. And the same tickets that he was finding for $400+, even on a bereavement fare, because of the fact that I had access to credit, I had access to the internet, I was able to find the same tickets for him for $120.
Premium on being poor.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, there's an entire usurious industry that's built on the cost of being poor. And when I did that, I decided that it was very unfair that my ability was also generated such a big difference in the gap, because I'm the person that could afford to pay for those services at that premium rate.
The poor pay more, the rich pay less, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. Well, you know, there's an entire cottage industry designed around continuing the cycle of poverty. There are companies who have built their entire bottom line on the cost of the spread between poor.
Prepaid cell phone and other kinds of
Prepaid cell phone, because of the usage, has gotten a lot better, but there are some industries, you know, for example, you know, some of the home phone reconnect businesses, some of the cash advance business, payday loan industry type companies, the fees are usurious and extremely
So you can borrow
exorbitant.
upon your paycheck next week, and those kinds of businesses.
Right. There's an article that came out, I believe it was about a week ago, that it said that that was calling for the city and state to go after the predatory lending involved around the payday loan business, because, you know, by the time it worked out, they could end up charging someone up to 2,100% APR on a loan versus the 24% maximum. Now, that's
Excessive.
Excessive is a light word for what it is. It
Criminal.
goes. I won't say that, but it goes beyond what should be the limits of reality.
2 questions, and
Sir.
we'll wrap this up. But how can people get in touch with you and begin this process of establishing themselves financially?
We are in the process of establishing a number of convenient locations around the city where people will be able to sign up for the program. If they're interested in information on the program, it's available on the internet at www.clearedpay.com.
All right, and for those people who don't have the internet,
For those people who don't have the internet, they can very easily call and sign up for our program. And we have a simple 800 number where we have a number of very professional customer service people who walk people through the entire process, as well as they're able to answer any questions about any of the fee structure and other inherent differences in our program versus other programs. And that number is 866-758-7001.
for those people who could use some financial advice and are watching this show, what are the 3 things they need to begin to prepare themselves to change their financial condition?
First thing they have to remember is, being a Black American, my grandmother always taught me, number one, first thing is when you get your paycheck, pay yourself, which means put some portion aside in savings. You know what your bills are, and bills will come regardless, but you have to learn to save some money for yourself. Learn that there are alternatives outside of what's your immediate line of sight. Yes, just because there's a check cashing company in your location doesn't mean that that's necessarily where you need to go. There are other alternatives. And I think principally most important thing is follow your aspirations and dreams, because your aspirations and dreams will lead you towards conduits that will allow you access to the mainstream, which is what ClearPay does.
Thank you so much. And again, we're going to bring you back on. You're very knowledgeable about the financial system that a lot of people find themselves in. One of the things, if you don't remember anything else, poor people pay an additional premium for being poor. And it perpetuates a cycle of poverty, because if you're paying more, you're keeping and saving less. And we need to find our way out of that through good common sense and using the financial tools available to us. And when you come back, we'll give you more good information on handling your business. Welcome back to Handling Your Business. Again, I'm your host, Curtis Jones Jr., and we have an interesting topic today, and our guests are going to talk to you about it. When we think of Philadelphia, we attended a graduation recently where a lot of the students who had spent 4 years in Philadelphia and had decided to move on from Philadelphia. And one of the reasons that they did was the housing question. And as employers in the city of Philadelphia, one of the main key ingredients to success is retaining qualified workforce that can help you grow your business and improve your bottom line. And our guests today are going to help us solve that problem. They have an innovative, powerful, new housing initiative and incentive for employers. And I want to welcome you to our show and Handling Your Business. Joining us today are Mr. Dan Hoffman and Tamara Grosset from GPUAC. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Okay. Tell us about this. I've heard the myths and the legends about these employer-assisted housing programs, but tell us about this one.
Okay. Actually, we're happy to be here today. In a sense, today is the public announcement here on your show of the new effort of the city and the Greater Philadelphia Urban Affairs Coalition, GPUAC, to create an employer-assisted housing program for the city, for employers in the city. And the program is one which helps employers attract and retain labor at the same time as it meets with and intersects with the city's community development effort. It does so by creating a partnership between the public sector and the employers to create a housing benefit for workers. In this city, people, when they think of employer-assisted housing, I think in large part of the University of Pennsylvania has had a program for in excess of 35 years. Our program works a little bit different, but the goal is the same, at least in part, and that is to improve the neighborhoods where employers are doing business. At the same time, these programs can be structured in ways that in the intermediate term are costless to employers. There's some short-term upfront cost, but over that cost can be recovered in savings in recruitment and retention. So it's a good business program as well.
So Dan, describe it for us. So if I'm a worker at GE and I decide that I want to buy a house, I understand that your organization will assist me with the down payment. Is that right?
Well, it's a partnership program. The city is working through GPUAC. Employers will put up some money, and they get to decide how much that is. And in response, the city will match that up to $3,000 on a dollar-for-dollar basis.
Mm-hmm. Tamara, how did GPUAC get into the mortgage business and assisted housing business?
Right. Well, the Office of Neighborhood Transformation,
NTI,
NTI,
right. Mm-hmm.
They sent out a proposal for an organization to administer this program on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So they put up the funding, and they were looking for an organization to administer this program, mm-hmm. which we've actually named Philadelphia Home Buy now, on behalf of the whole city. Mm-hmm. And so GPUAC won that proposal, that award. Mm-hmm. And so with Dan Hoffman as our consultant, we've developed and customized a program just for Philadelphia, as well as figured out a way for a certain number of lenders to be involved, so we can ensure just a certain quality of the kind of mortgage products that will be available.
So none of that predatory lending.
Exactly.
Stuff, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So let me get this again. Again, I'm an employee of a major company. The company annies up a portion of the down payment up to $3,000, I understand?
They can pick any amount. The minimum is $500, but they can pick any amount. For example, Citizens Bank has a program. In some instances, in targeted neighborhoods, they'll put up to $8,000. But I don't want to leave the impression that it's just for big companies. Indeed, I think that many small businesses could be attracted to this. In the real world, small businesses having an increasingly difficult time competing over health benefits, which are just spiraling out of control. This can be an alternative benefit package that a lot of young people, a lot of people who employers want to keep would want. And we've done enough survey research nationally to know that employees are interested in making all kinds of innovative trade-offs. Less health coverage, different vacation schedules, a variety of different things in order to get this type of benefit.
So as an employer, I can either offer this assistance, $500 to whatever number, in a form of a grant, one-time gift, or a loan that could be repaid over time.
That's right.
And then the city of Philadelphia will match up to $3,000.
That's right.
So, I mean, that really helps in today's economy where housing costs are going crazy.
And for certain lower income employees who would qualify for a mortgage through the State Housing Finance Agency, they could be eligible for another $2,000 on top of that.
Okay, so we could be talking anywhere from $10,000 worth of down
Could.
payment. Now that is going to be a powerful incentive to encourage employers to keep good employees. So if I'm looking at a firm in Jersey as a potential employment opportunity, and a firm in Philadelphia, and they're offering, among their other benefits, this mortgage assistance, it's a powerful reason to stay here.
Absolutely.
That's great.
It's about buying into the city. The city, many times, and public policy is really focused on creating jobs. I think more and more people are coming to understand jobs are obviously important, but holding on to those employees in the city, particularly in a city that has suffered from depopulation, is also very important.
Human capital.
And so this puts both of them together. It's about the jobs, but it's also about the housing at the same time.
Where can we find out more information about this if employers want to plug into this?
I'm the contact
Okay,
person.
well, tell my audience. They want to. They're getting their pens and paper now. You're going to be besieged with calls.
Right. You can contact me at GPUAC, and my name is Tamara Grosset, and my number is 215-851-1774. The first step in the process will be for Dan Hoffman to have a technical meeting with an interested employer, just to talk about how an employer can customize the program, what kind of features the program could have in order to meet the particular business goals that that employer has. And then the employer would file a letter of intent to participate and a participation plan, which we would work together with the agency to develop that.
You mentioned certain lenders that you were working with. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. It's Beneficial Savings Bank, Commerce Bank, Citizens Bank, also the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, as well as Sovereign Bank,
United.
and United Bank.
So it's a good selection.
Responsible lenders,
Exactly.
people will know when they walk in the door, they're getting a responsible mortgage product, they're not getting into trouble with predatory
Right.
lenders or any of that kind of stuff. And indeed, again, we've done enough surveying nationally, people knowing, buying a house can be a scary business sometimes. People knowing that they're not making a mistake, employees like that a lot, that they know that their employer has sent them off in the right direction on this kind of thing, very valuable. And we also, for people who are really inexperienced, we have counseling that we can put them into.
Talk about the counseling that's available. I think you're right. Buying a home is probably the single most important purchase young couples or individuals will make. And how do they get educated on that?
Yeah, part of the program, another way for the employer to participate is to link their employees up with 3 education providers that we have that can give them an overview of the home buying process, can give them an overview of what is required for a home inspection, and also home maintenance. That's one part of it. So that would be in the form of a group workshop where these education providers can come on site to the employer and a group of employees can receive this education. The second part of it is if an employee then decides that he or she might want more, just more advanced training in a particular area, for example, plumbing, the employer can put aside a contribution towards that training, and we have the providers all lined up, ready to offer that.
Are these tax deductible for employers?
For the employer, it's a cost of doing business, so like any wage or benefit, it's tax deductible. That being said, when we work with, because we'll help you customize your program, there are ways that these things can be structured that not only are they tax deductible, but in fact, there's no tax implication at all because you're really not spending any money at the end of the day.
Finally, I travel around the world and people are proud Philadelphians, and too often they tell us, yeah, I'm from Philadelphia, but I had to leave to pursue my dream. Finally, GPUAC, along with the Neighborhood Transformation Initiative, is doing something to get our brightest, our best, our talented to stay in Philadelphia. And we applaud your efforts and thank you.
Well,
for
thank
coming
you
on
for
our
your
show.
help
Thank
in
you.
getting the word out.
Okay. And when we come back, we'll handle your business.